Welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. People of faith are more hesitant in some ways to express their beliefs right now than perhaps at any other point in our nation's history. They're afraid of online criticism. They're afraid of getting canceled. But it's also been said that we haven't had more religious freedom or protection of that right in over 100 years. And with recent Supreme Court rulings, it's definitely trending in that direction. Well, I'm super excited to have a guest that we had on previously, Coach Joe Kennedy. He has been through the ringer and back. He's a coach up in Washington State, and everybody calls him Coach. He's an 18-year Marine veteran. Many of you who watch this podcast will remember that early podcast with his attorney just shortly before they were going to go before the Supreme Court to argue their case for religious freedom. So, Joe, welcome back, my friend.
It is so good to be back.
It's back. It's good to be back on this side of the legal battle, right?
Oh, I can't even tell you. After 8 years, it seems like it would never end, and finally we're here today.
Listen, this is a story that everyone needs to get up to speed on. You know, I remember when I first talked to you and I found out that your journey had gone through several iterations since you were removed as a coach from Bremerton High School in Washington. You were removed as a coach for praying silently at the 50-yard line. I think that's where it all started. Tell us a little bit about that. Just tell us about the history. Tell us about that 8-year journey to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, just a high school football coach, you never think anything's going to go anywhere, and you just want to, have a good winning season. And, all of a sudden we have somebody compliment what our football program's doing, and it turning into a national news story. I mean, you can't even make these things up, how crazy it is. And just for a 30-second prayer after a football game, somebody being thankful. Of all the things I've been in trouble for, praying probably should not have been one of them.
Listen, knowing your background just a little bit as a Marine and as kind of a little bit of a ruffian of sorts, that's probably a pretty true statement. Here you are, you've gone your whole life, and here you are praying silently at midfield. And I'm assuming this is after the games, and you head out to midfield and you take a knee. Now, it started with just you, but then it grew, of course. It grew to some of the players on the teams and then the opposing teams. Is that when it became problematic because it started to catch on and it started to grow?
I wish I had a really good answer, and only thing I could think of is it's the school district's attorneys and people that are outside our school itself. No one had a problem. I did this for 8 years, and like you said, I was praying by myself, and it all depended on, the game. If you lose by 60 points, no kid's going to want to be, thankful for anything. And the same goes if they win by 60 points. They lose their mind. They just want to go out and have a good time and celebrate. So, yeah, it was hit and miss. But, it came into the 8th year when both teams were together. And that was the first year that all the teams in our league got together and actually prayed with us. And one of the other people saw what we were doing and gave a compliment on that. Now, I don't know why you do an investigation on a compliment, but as soon as it became newsworthy and they started making, the school district started making threats, it picked up in the news. Then you had everybody on each side and everybody was up in arms. And so really to me, it was all just a huge misunderstanding. I was working with the school, trying to figure out how to navigate this. The school was also trying to do this because these guys are my friends. These aren't my enemies. I've been working with these guys for, a decade, and they're personal friends of mine. We go to church together. We've been coaching, have, holidays together. So this was all, to me, just absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, I guess they say at such a time as this, obviously God knows what he's doing and made this happen exactly when it needed to happen.
Yeah. It is amazing too. Most often it's outside sources that are coming into a community that has no problem with the behavior or whatever the action. You've been doing it for years and years and years without any problem. In fact, with a very positive exposure to it. People enjoyed it. People thought it was good. It was good for their kids, good to build character. And then you have these outside forces come in and tell you, oh, by the way, there's separation of church and state. That coach is not permitted under the Constitution to pray on the field because he's a public official as a coach at a high school. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? One of the things that I learned from your case, and of course, being in sports ministry for a long, long time, I knew a lot about this. But one of the things I learned is you never have to check your faith at the door. You don't have to leave your faith behind to enter the public school arena or to enter any arena for that matter. And I think that's what they were essentially telling you was, hey, it's okay that you do this, but you have to do it in private. You can't do it in a public way. You need to check your faith at the door. And that's when it became problematic, I know, for you, because you had made a commitment to God to give him your coaching. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, after watching, I got off of the job on a Friday, and I was a brand new baby believer, and I didn't know what was going on. I'm still learning, what it means to believe in God and have faith. And I got offered this job. I went to the interview, and I didn't know if I even wanted to do it. I'm not a football guy. I don't know a whole lot about football. I'm not an X and O guy. So it was a big deal to go from the Marines and having a career in the military to all of a sudden now being retired, taking over a whole new career. And my family, we weren't sure if that was what we wanted to do. And then in the middle of the night, we saw the Facing the Giants, and you can't get any more of a clear picture. And I fell to my knees. I'm bawling my eyes out. And that's, like you said, is where I said, hey, God, I'm going to give you the glory after every game, win or lose. So I actually stole it out of the movies, and that's what I did. And to take it a step further, when the school district told me to stop praying with the kids, it was unfortunate because it was a good thing, and it was good to see these kids, being grateful for something. And since it wasn't mandatory and nobody cared, when I said, all right, fine, we won't do that. And then they said, well, we can still see you. And that's where it drew the line, where I couldn't even do it by myself, where somebody could see me. That's where the Constitution in my mind was the line that I couldn't pass.
Yeah. And what I love about this is your arguments before the Supreme Court. Of course, you had great representation with First Liberty Institute, some of the best attorneys on the planet, faith-based. They love God, they love Jesus, and they are working tirelessly to ensure that religious freedom remains a core component of this country. I mean, it really is one of those things that if we lose this, that's going to be a pretty bad day. But you had great representation, and then they made that argument, right, that the separation of church and state, of course, is nowhere to be found in any of our documents. It was a speech by Thomas Jefferson. And what he was saying was, we're going to protect your right to the free exercise of your faith, regardless of where you are. Yeah, and we cannot infringe on your free exercise. So in essence, he was saying, we want to make sure that the government doesn't restrict your ability to be true to God in the expression of your faith. Is that what was argued at the Supreme Court?
Yeah, you really nailed it. And where is that line? And it's been so blurred for so long. And we had a horrible case law, the Lemon case. And there was a Lemon law that had to sniff out any kind of religion in the public square. And so that case was the big burden because it was the reasonable observer. Well, I know a lot of people, and I don't know a reasonable person. So I don't even know what that means. And it was great the way the Supreme Court worded it. We presented a great case. It was very, very to the point and made it just black and white. It was just asking the question, am I allowed to pray after a football game? And that's all it was. And yes, they answered it and said that the Constitution, the First Amendment, that it's made to enhance each other, the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and the free exercise. Those complement each other. They're not supposed to be opposing forces. And you nailed it, that they cleared that up and took away the Lemon Law and cleared that up.
And I think the great thing about that is, from my perspective, is this frees up coaches, men and women of faith. It frees them up to express their faith in the public square. It essentially says that there's no more gag order. It's perfectly acceptable for you to pray before, during, and I mean, I remember being as a coach, I used to pray during the game. I mean, we were hoping
Throwing a
for
Hail
win.
Mary. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We prayed a lot.
We prayed a lot, and not to be flippant about it, but we prayed a lot. We prayed before the game. You see high profile athletes. You see guys like Patrick Mahomes. You see guys like Kirk Cousins. You see guys all over the league in the NFL, all over every single professional and amateur sports league. You see people of faith, men and women of God, who pray before games, who pray on the sideline, who pray in the huddle, who pray after the games, and yet they still wanted to muzzle you. And one of the things I wanted to touch on here. This was a 7 and now an 8-year battle. Why I appreciate and admire you so much is that you were willing to sacrifice for the greater good. And I think what a lot of people today do is we go along to get along. And we don't realize that the courage of one single man, the courage of one woman, the courage of kids can actually impact not only you, but also generations to come. And that's why I love what you did. Did you know at the beginning that this was going to take you 8 years?
No, I thought I would be back on the field by, the end of the week and playing the next game. We were mid-season. I'm like, this is so ridiculous. How can this possibly be? And then when the court started making the rulings and nobody wanted to touch it, the district court, the judge said, I'm on your side. I prayed with my team. My dad prayed when he was a coach. And I'm like, we won this, slam dunk. And he says, however, due to today's climate, and I was flipping out. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't understand what climate has to do with freedom. So, yeah, you're not a weatherman. Report on what the law is, not on what the weather is. And
yes.
Yeah, so... And it went all the way up. The Ninth Circuit Court or the 12th Circuit Court of Appeals, they even ruled it that I was a bad Christian because I didn't pray the way that the judge prays. I mean, that's how crazy this case has been.
It's nuts. And most of America knows that I shouldn't say it this way, but that the Pacific Northwest is kind of nutty. Okay, so we do realize
the left coast, yeah.
And the left coast, right? There's some things. Right. But for them to rule, not only to rule that what you were doing was unconstitutional, but then to go further than that and comment on your faith and your practice of the faith and whether or not it is truly honoring God or not is just disgusting to me. It's actually disturbing. And it makes me so
They went
glad.
after my character. They went after my character. They went after my wife because she was the employee of the school district. It just got really, really ugly and unfortunate. But hey, it absolutely worth the fight. I'd go through it again. I would never want to. I never wish this upon anybody, but somebody had to do it. Somebody has to stand up. And, if I could do it, imagine what other people can do that are much more influential than me. I'm just a high school football coach in Bremerton, Washington. Most people don't even know where that is.
Yeah. Well, what's great about it is you're showing that every single person matters. It doesn't matter if you think you have influence or not. It doesn't matter if you think you have a platform. It's something we hear all the time now. I want to use my platform. I want a bigger platform. Hey, just use where you are. Just be faithful, bloom where you're planted. And I think that this is an encouragement to everyday Americans because I can tell you that our listeners all are facing crossroads where their faith is intersecting with the public square, and they're deciding right now, am I going to have the courage to stand up for what's right and good and pure, or am I going to just go along to get along? And so this case for me, I want to just say it loud and clear, is that every single person, no matter how small you think you are, you can't imagine what God is capable of doing with the courage of a Daniel, with the courage of a Coach Joe Kennedy. That's why this matters. I want everybody listening to say, I can have that courage and do something about it.
Yeah, because, the way I always said it, that, being a Christian and person of faith, it's not a spectator sport. You have to be active in it. So I encourage everybody to get off your butt, stand up for what we believe in, what our country was made of. What are we afraid of? We outnumber, the extremes on either side. So just stand up and be who you are. Especially in a day and age where we, cram, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, guess what? That includes us.
Yes.
That's everyone. Nobody's special. Every American has the exact same rights, and nobody's better than anybody else.
Yes. Okay. So listen, everybody wants to know, what's it like being there? I'm assuming you were in the courtroom for the arguments before the Supreme Court. Tell us, what is that environment like? Was that intimidating? What's that all about?
To me, it was more frustrating, not just because it took forever, but nobody really goes by the facts anymore. And I was very let down by the way that it's all about how you tell your story. They make a narrative and they come up with other stories that aren't even in the case. Not to bore anybody, but if you read through all the testimonies and the depositions, nobody was ever forced. Nobody ever felt like they were forced. They could never find anybody. But all of a sudden, they started a narrative of, oh, yeah, you have to pray to play. And I'm like, where did they come up with that? So the narrative kept on changing. And it's frustrating to sit in a courtroom and not being able to say anything because you're trusting your attorneys to do it. And when they brought up my wife, oh, man, I tell you, I wanted to go throat punch somebody. I needed to take a deep breath and pray right there.
Yeah, I'll bet you did. Oh, and listen, I'm right with you. I might have been behind you. I'll tell you this. This is interesting. I wrote down one word as you were talking, and that word was justice. And, our justice system, it should be around finding the truth, the facts. Because your case never, ever should have made it to the Supreme Court. This should have been settled, like you said, next weekend, you'd be back on the field. That's how this should have been settled. That's what's so disturbing, is that the narrative changes, the facts don't support it. And my understanding now is that those who are attacking religious freedom in this country, they are banking on the fact that you will not last. You won't play it all the way out 7 or 8 years, that it will bankrupt you, it will ruin you, it will destroy your life long before it ever gets settled in your favor. Do you feel like that's a tactic based on what you've seen?
Oh, it absolutely is. You can see that in I forget the name of the group, but the Freedom of Church and State or whatever they're called. There's this group, and they just send out mass emails to every single school and threaten them. And they say, we'll sue you if you don't comply with this. Well, everybody's so afraid these days and living in fear that it's so much easier just to give in than to push back because everybody's afraid. That's not America. That's not what Americans are about.
That's right. And I love the fact that you were a Marine, because I think you, as anyone who serves in the military knows, the level of sacrifice, the level of service that you're giving for your country, for the freedoms. I mean, you are our first line of defense to preserve and protect our God-given rights and protect freedom, not only here, but around the world. And so when you come back and then you discover that the things that you were serving for in the Marine Corps are not even being upheld here in America in everyday life, that had to be quite a slap in the face in some ways.
Now, shocking, and there's no words that describe it. Every time we take the oath of enlistment, we raise our hands and we take the oath and we say we're going to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I never thought I would be fighting it domestically like I have. But Guess what? I was trained for it. So, yeah, sometimes you have to fight for even our freedoms within our own government.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at across the country on a number of cultural issues, a number of moral issues. I have a lot of people that tell me, man, I hate politics. I don't want to be involved in politics. I said, well, at the core of every single political issue is a moral issue. And as a believer in Jesus, you have an obligation, you have a moral obligation to stand up for truth, to represent the kingdom of God here now. So you don't get a pass just because you don't like politics or you don't like it, because all of these issues, the fact that most Christians have sat out the culture war for the last 50 years is the reason that we're bearing the fruit that we are today. So Amen. That's why what you've done is so important. Let's talk a little bit about the win. So we won. You won. This is a big, big day, right? Tell us now, we've secured the right to be able to express your faith even on a public school campus. That's amazing. But secondarily now, you're being reinstated as a coach. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I went to spring ball. I came out here earlier in the year, and things did not go. That was not welcomed with open arms, and had to go through all the red tape, and it was very frustrating. But now that fall season is here, the coaches have been spectacular. The school district's still kind of, I don't want to say anything bad, but I can't say anything good. And it's going to be interesting because we have our first game coming up on September 1st. And I'm encouraging all Americans to, have a national night of prayer and give thanks. I don't care where you're sitting, where you're standing, take a knee and thank your parents, thank whoever or whatever you believe in. Take a moment to just be thankful and kick off the football season right. And we have our first practice Wednesday, so tomorrow is our first day. I'm going to meet my team. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be emotional, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, the game really stresses me out. They've said, it could be up to 10,000 people to show up to a football game. That's more than what some of the Pac-10 schools actually, or the Pac-12 schools actually, have in attendance. So that part stresses me out because it's an unknown, and I don't want the focus on me. I just want everybody to realize that America is free. You do have freedoms, and you got to exercise them, or else you're going to lose them.
Yes. And stop being so afraid of it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are afraid of being called names. If you stand up for border security, somehow you become a racist. If there's 100 of these things. What I'm seeing amongst believers and amongst people that love this country is we don't care. Sticks and stone. Listen, we don't care about the names you're going to call us because we know that none of them are true. We know that that's a tactic of Marxism. It's a tactic of communism. It's rules for radicals. We're not falling for that same nonsense anymore because we're standing on the truth. So here you go. You're back reinstated as a coach. Talk a little bit about, I know that there is a movement, right? There is kind of a national movement to take a knee. Is it called Take a Knee? What's happening on that front?
It depends who you talk to. So there is a movement, and I think most Americans can feel it. I don't know what the name is going to be. I know we're trying to restore freedom in America. That's one of them. A national prayer. I mean, there's so many different ones. But really, it's, let's support everybody that is doing it and get out there and do it yourself. You could be the prime example, because if an average Joe could do it, why not you? Stand up. The door's been wide open. We just blew the doors off. So let's go through it. Check out the other side to see what it's like, and to be able to stand up or take a knee or to be thankful, bow your head in prayer. It's actually going to feel real good to know that you do have that freedom and not have to worry about the recourses of it.
So one of the cool things out of this whole process for you, Coach, is that you were able to put your story in a book, and you were able to capture not only this journey, but also kind of the lead up to that, kind of your life story a bit. Tell us a little bit about the book and where we can get that.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's, to me, really a love story. Maybe not the one that people are traditionally used to. It talks about my childhood, where I grew up, how I grew up, and all the group homes and foster homes, all the trials and tribulations I went through as a kid, and then ultimately finding love for his country, which I belong to something greater than myself. And then my childhood sweetheart right after I got out of the Marine Corps, and then my love for God. I found faith, and I've been living every step of the way. And if a guy like me, just the average Joe, can actually do this and make a difference, I want this to inspire everybody. When they read this book, and when the movie comes out, they go through it. I want them to be inspired, kind of like the Rocky, when afterwards you feel, I could do something, I can make a difference. I want to inspire everybody to know that everybody's worth loving, and there's somebody who loves you.
It's amazing. So I'm going to put the where they can get the book in the show notes, to make sure that we promote that for sure, because I think that is going to be one of those inspiring stories that's going to help to create that resurgence of people of faith who are going to be inspired to do great things, even in the smallest ways, regardless of where they are in life. They can make a difference for others. So we'll promote that for sure.
Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah, Coach, or the average Joe, the Coach Kennedy story, and it's on Amazon, so that'll be out in October. So you can do the pre-sale now and get it, and I can't wait to just come on your show and sign one and run through it together.
Yeah. And, this is pretty impressive. A coach writing a book. I mean, come on, man. This is like the old Rocky stories, the old, it was invincible with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is what this is.
Yeah, I see it now, but when I was going through it, I never thought, no. That's why we named it appropriately.
Right, exactly. But isn't it the beauty of the way God does things, right? He takes people that don't feel like they have value and weaves this beautiful story together that doesn't make sense a lot of times along the way, but in the end you go, oh my goodness, what a masterpiece. And I think that's what people are finding in your story.
Yeah, you can see his fingerprints on your entire life once he's put the puzzle pieces together. It might look fragmented at the beginning, but as the pieces come together, you see, oh my God, God's got his fingerprints on everything.
Yeah, and he doesn't waste anything. Like, he doesn't waste hardship. He doesn't waste pain. And I think that's why a lot of times we can persevere through very, very hard times, because we know that in the end, God is going to work all of those circumstances together for our good and for his glory. And I think that's your story. I just want to thank you. And, I wanted to have you back on just because, first of all, it feels good to win, right? Listen, we
won. We won.
Exactly. This is a big win. You had the persistence. You had the resilience. I mean, there were a lot of setbacks along the way. There were plenty of opportunities for you to give up. You were surrounded by legal professionals and a whole bunch of other people that made this possible for it to happen. And because of it, because of your sacrifice, because of your courage, now there are coaches, thousands of coaches, there are thousands of parents that are going to be empowered, emboldened to express their faith in the public square. So for that, Coach, super grateful. Thanks for agreeing to come back. Thanks for making that commitment and sacrifice. And God bless you, man. So grateful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody that's prayed. The prayer, I really, really believe in prayer. And, like that kid that was it 2 years ago that had cardiac arrest on the football field during an NFL game. I mean, he came back to life from prayer. So you can't tell me that prayer isn't powerful. We won this. It went to the Supreme Court twice and we won, all because of the prayer and prayers of Americans. That's power right there.
That's a great reminder, a great way to close the show. Joe, you're the best, buddy. Hey, we'll be praying for you for your opening day, for your first time with the team, and your first game. I know that's going to be a big deal. We'll be praying for you.
Awesome. I'll talk to you right after that, my friend.
You got it. You got it. God bless.
You too.